Grace and Peace family, I'm Esprit Parker and I'm here with Keith White and Justin Bernard, and today we will be speaking about social justice.
I'm Justin Bernard and I'm part of the media team at CCC in Long Island.
And I'm Keith White and I'm part of the CCC Social Justice Initiative.
So to start off, what does the Black Lives Matter movement mean to you guys?
So Black Lives Matter means a couple of things. I think that it's an affirmation to say that for a long time in this country, since its inception, Black lives didn't matter. And so it's an affirmation from Black people saying, actually, our lives do matter. So that's a kind of like one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is it's a movement. It's a movement that says that not only are we going to start or continue to care about our lives and our lives mattering, but now we're going to be very proactive in making sure that the world recognizes and acknowledges that Black lives matter.
I think that what stands out to me most importantly is we know that all lives matter, you know, and it's highlighting that we matter as well, and it's not anything that we are trying to say that we're above or more privileged. We'll get into that, but I don't subscribe to the whole entire worldview of it. I subscribe to certain areas of it. I'm not sure how we got tied into other communities being attached to it. I think it's kind of diminishing the value, the foundation of it.
So being that you are in your early 20s, what made this particular case of police brutality stand out more so to you that caused you to join the protesters?
The feeling of just being tired of seeing this, you know, it's a lot of emotion with it, but I think that is what drove me the most, was the feeling of being tired, seeing it, and the fact that it was on the front line of where I'm at, you know, it was kind of talked about, well, if COVID comes over here, then what are we gonna do? And we see these protests all the time, like, yo, if I was there, and it was honestly like around the corner from my house. I remember we were on shoot for one of the highlights, doing some work for the church, and the protest was literally around the corner, and I stopped, and I was like, yo, guys, I gotta go.
So from a law perspective, how hard is it going to be to frame this type of case, especially being that it has so much global recognition right now?
Well, I don't think that the global recognition adds to or takes away from the framework, the legal framework, or the blocks to a legal framework for prosecuting the police officers who killed George Floyd, the police officers who killed Breonna Taylor, all the way. I mean, you know, this thing has been happening, Eleanor Bumpers, like, you know, these cases of cops killing innocent Black people, whether they're innocent or not, killing Black people unjustified for a long time. The legal roadblocks to it are that the police are often empowered by local laws, local ordinances, and local customs and practices to practice the types of things that they do in order to practice law and order. And so, in many of these societies and communities, the concept of law and order is above the concept of liberty, freedom, and justice. And so that's going to be the roadblock. And I think that there may be indictments, I think there are indictments in the George Floyd murderers, but will there be indictments in the Breonna Taylor case? I don't know. But I know that there are police customs and practices that are allowed by certain local communities and cities and municipalities that will operate as a roadblock to getting convictions for murder. Maybe not felony assault, maybe not manslaughter, but murder.
So what do you guys think that the police can do to mend community relationships?
I think that the problem is police, right? And I sound super radical, but I've been saying this for years, right? The problem is the concept of policing. And so I don't think that it's the police responsibility to mend the relationship with the community. I think that it's the community's responsibility to have enough empowerment, enough voting blocks to defund police programs, right? And start putting programs into social services, education, putting them in place, putting funding in place where our communities really need it. We don't need as many police as they are funded, and so I think that is the work of our community. The work of our community is saying, hey, what's our need? What's our community need? And allocating funding to those needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Justin, how did you feel when you were protesting out here in Smithtown, when the crowd of protesters were in front of the precinct and it was the protesters versus the police at one point?
So I solely went out there for the purpose to document it. You know, I had my equipment with me, and I didn't have an energy in me or a drive to say, you know what, I'm gonna start walking with these people. But something was pulled out of me that, you know, it was so unexpected that I had to pack up my equipment. I said, yo, I had to walk with you guys. And one thing that they needed the most was a little bit of leadership. You know, a lot of people, they weren't from this community. They didn't know the ins and outs of the streets and stuff like that. It was led by secret police, and it was infiltrated. So keeping the drive of, you know, what the mission statement is and why we're here, you know, to disrupt things and to be heard and to be seen. And that was awesome. But the environment that was out there, it was an atmosphere that was really at war with spirits. It was a spiritual warfare out there.
Yeah.
And highlighting that is important, you know. And it was intense. That changed my life. I could definitely say that, you know.
How do you think your dad would feel seeing you out there with all of the protesters?
I think being in my own town, that he lived here and I grew up here, I think he would 100% be for it.
100%. Super
Be proud.
proud.
I think he'd be hyped.
What do you guys think the church's relationship should be with the Black Lives Matter movement?
I think that the church's relationship is with the community and community needs. And so I think the conversation between the church and the community should be, it should be, there should be no gap in the communication between the church and the community. And the church should be a gathering place for the community to come be restored, but then also come share information, right? That's what happened with the Underground Railroad. When Harriet Tubman was running from underground location to underground location, one of her stops, or many of her stops, were in churches. And these were the gathering places where people were developing ideas about freedom, about liberty, and about justice. And so the church's relationship to Black Lives Matter should be the same. We should be the gathering place. We should be the place where we're sharing ideas, sharing resources with each other within the Black Lives Matter movement, and advancing the idea and the ideology that Black Lives Matter.
I agree. So what advice would you give to the little black boy, the little black girl that's young and they're growing up in an environment where it's predominantly white and it's a tougher environment for them to grow up in? What advice would you give them?
I think that I can relate to that. You know, growing up in Smithtown, that's something that's okay to say. You know, like I grew up in Long Island my whole entire life. I witnessed certain things that inner city people don't really realize, urban areas and stuff like that. But stay true to your uniqueness. You know,
Yeah.
Don't ever abandon who you are and who you were born to be. You know, you have a color on your skin, and that's for a reason.
Do we think protests are enough? What can we do? What can the government do to really end systemic racism at this point?
I have a burn it down mentality. I don't think that the government is going to reform itself, because the government benefits, and the people who are most privileged in the society benefit from the disadvantaged and the minoritized communities. So, you know, I believe that this idea of capitalism going wild, this idea of corporatism going wild, is going to cannibalize itself. And I think that what we have to do, what people have to do, is we have to make sure that we don't become part of that ideology. And so we have to check our value systems at every door. And checking our value systems is saying, you know what, I don't subscribe to the belief that in order for me to get ahead, I have to exploit others. In order for me to be okay, somebody else has to not be okay. And I think that that's an ideology that's run rampant in America, right, from its inception. And I think that I don't know that the government is equipped or even has a desire to fix that. I think that that's the thing that's going to cannibalize itself, and we just have to prepare ourselves to govern ourselves and build community within ourselves to make sure that we're not building from the ashes and seeds of something evil and that's based on a despot, but we're building on something that's based on values that we all are in alignment with.
And that concludes today's interview. A special thank you to Keith White and Justin Bernard for joining us here today. We hope you all received a great message from within this segment that we just held, and we hope you all have a great week.